Let me just begin by sharing these words with you. America is on trial. Even though the trial of George Zimmerman has come to a conclusion that for many of us is unsatisfactory and represents a travesty of justice, the trial of America is just beginning. America is on trial in the eyes of young African-American males who now have received what we all know in the black community is the talk. And yet even the talk is not an immunization from what can take place if you are tracked down, stalked, and terrorized by a Barney Fife wannabe police officer who in a real sense cares nothing for your life or liberty because they racially profile you and label you a suspect. And the sad reality is we still live in a nation where you can be defined, demonized, and destroyed because of the color of your skin. And so America's on trial. America's on trial in the eyes of a community that recognizes the legacy of a constitution that labeled us 3/5 of an individual. And here we are in 2013, not 3/5 of an individual, but in a real sense in a country that says, okay, if you shoot at your ceiling in self-defense from domestic violence, you'll get 20 years. But if you terrorize, track down, and stalk an unarmed black teenager and kill him, he will get blamed for his murder and you will walk free. America is on trial. And with that being the case, in cities across this country, the Reverend Al Sharpton and even the voice of Trayvon Martin calls upon us to gather as a people of goodwill, as lovers of democracy, as those who believe that the best days for this country are not behind us but in front of us. And as a consequence, this coming Saturday, we will join in with 100 other cities across this nation, called again by the Reverend Al Sharpton of the National Action Network, called again by the voice of Trayvon Martin, to gather together and call for justice. We're going to be calling for several things. Number one, we're going to call for the Justice Department to pursue charges against George Zimmerman that he violated the civil rights of young teenager Trayvon Martin. We're calling upon the Justice Department to do just that. Number two, we want to give a space and place for young persons who have been so moved by this terrible tragedy and subsequent travesty of justice to articulate both their hurts and their hopes. And so as a consequence, we will have a prominent place on the stage on Saturday morning at 11 o'clock a.m. at this rally at the plaza here at City Hall for young people to express themselves and share again their hopes and their hurts. And then thirdly, we're going to call upon this nation to examine afresh its laws that disproportionately and negatively impact the African American community as well as brown and poor people. All across this country, we've seen the tragic results of laws such as Stand Your Ground. So we're going to stand our ground. We're going to stand our ground against mandatory minimum sentencing. We're going to stand our ground against 3 strikes and you're out. We're going to stand our ground for the Racial Justice Act. We're going to stand our ground against a drug war that has filled up our prisons. We're going to stand our ground against uneven sentencing in a criminal justice system that is unjust and downright criminal. And so America is on trial. And since America is on trial, I find it quite prophetic and providential that America is on trial 150 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. America is on trial 50 years after the murder of 4 little black girls in Birmingham, Alabama at the 16th Street Baptist Church who were simply studying in Sunday school. America is on trial. 50 years after Medgar Evers was shot down in cold blood. America is on trial. 50 years after the Great March on Washington. And the question is, how will America respond? Our children are calling for us to respond in a way that will make us truly one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The prophet Amos is hoping that we will respond because he is declaring, let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Jesus of Nazareth is hoping that we will respond appropriately because Jesus says, inasmuch as you do it to the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you are also doing it unto me. With that being the case, America is on trial, and I want to say thank you so much to the pastor of the Wilshire Baptist Church, Dr. George Mason, always on the front lines for justice. He is here today. I want to thank Pastor Robert Kennedy from All Nations Fellowship there in Garland, Texas. He is always on the front lines. Pastor Marcus King, thank you so much. Pastor Rodney Frazier from Cedar Hill, thank you so much. All of the pastors and colleagues who are joining with us, thank you so much for your presence and for your belief that not only is America on trial, but the best days for this nation are not behind us, they are in front of us. And so it is our prayer that what was a tragic murder will now become a transformational movement so that America on trial will find itself not just on trial, but in a real sense transformed. We have several people I want you to hear from today. I want to begin with a young man who almost broke my heart this morning. I knew of the fact that our young people are traumatized by what has taken place in recent days, and he texted me this morning, Jordan Petrie, and shared with me that as a college student who's doing the right thing, playing by the rules, paying his dues, he is now angry, and at the same time he is afraid. I think it's important that we give him a space and place to articulate his hurts and hopes. Just before he comes, let me remind you afresh, the rally will take place on the plaza of City Hall at 11 o'clock a.m. this coming Saturday. We're expecting thousands of people of goodwill to join with us as we stand for justice and we stand for righteousness and we declare, America, you're on trial, but let this be a transformational movement. Please now receive a wonderful college student, my wonderful young brother, Jordan Petrie.